I'm ranking every steel type move in Pokemon. We've covered Dragon already, and next up are those clunky steel type moves. Steel moves were definitely underwhelming ones the first few generations they were in, but recent gens have bolstered their stock tenfold with a handful of cracked signature moves. I'm going to be hard pressed to pick number one, so gear up and heavy slam that like button, and I'll make it rain with more bangers until you spin out and seek shelter. Once again, I am ranking these moves in a vacuum, so not considering distribution, and basing them on how useful they would be to the average mon in competitive situations. We have 34 moves to cover this time, no Z moves or max moves obviously. Let's get into the first one. Spot 34, we're starting with gear up. Was there really any other choice for bottom spot? For those unaware, this move raises the attack and special attack of the user and their ally, if their ability is plus or minus. Yikes. Game Freak is going to have to try just a tad bit harder if they want to make these abilities work. The effect itself is alright, but the requirements are just too specific for a workup clone. Moving up to 33, we have our first attack in Metal Claw. At 50 base power and 95% accuracy, this early game move isn't too shabby. It's often just used as a coverage move when you don't have too much type variety. It also carries a nice little 10% chance to boost a user's attack. Nothing crazy, but it is something at least. On to spot 32 is a very rare move in Magnet Bomb. This move comes in at 60 base power and cannot miss. It isn't super prevalent due to its very limited distribution, but it is essentially a variation of moves like Aerial Ace and Feint Attack. It isn't necessarily a bad move, but there exist better versions of it essentially, and it just isn't good enough to raise its stock above the next tier of moves. Spot 31 sees a newly released move in Hard Press. This move has a variable base power and 100% accuracy. They really fumbled the bag on this Crush Grip variation. It has a cap of 100 base power when the target is at max HP, and becomes weaker the less HP the target has. This in theory makes it a good tool early on in a battle, but as we've seen with the other moves that work this way, is they're not worth running, even at their higher max power of 120. It becomes essentially useless if your opponents have taken any decent chip damage. The only reason to ever run this is if you really need steel coverage and your only other options are the moves already covered. And one can argue Magnet Bomb is more consistent in that case. Entering the top 30, we start to get the moves that I would consider decent. In this spot, I have Steel Wing. This OG steel move has 70 base power and 90% accuracy. Nostalgia makes me want to push this one up higher, but in a vacuum, this move is pretty outclassed and doesn't really set itself apart from the pack. Its defining characteristic is a 10% chance to raise the user's defense by a stage. Nothing impressive power or secondary effect wise, combined with a mischance, really hurts its ranking and sees it on the lower side. Right above Steel Wing in spot 29 is Mirror Shot. This Octazooka variation comes in at 65 base power and sports 85% accuracy. This sounds pretty bad, it definitely is, but its saving grace is a great 30% chance to lower the target's accuracy by one stage. This is arguably the best stat to lower overall, and most likely to cause your opponent to swap. With even a small buff to accuracy and power, I could see this being a legitimate competitive option, but how it stands now, it stays as a mid-game move that can be pretty useful, but a bit unreliable. Now in spot 28 is the move Steel Roller. At 130 base power and 100% accuracy, this move is very situational. Steel Roller requires the terrain to be active to work. After being used successfully, the terrain is removed from the field. This heavily limits the ability to actually use this move. You have to either be packing terrain yourself or get lucky with your opponent bringing it. This makes it more suited to doubles where you can pair Steel Roller with a terrain setter to get off one big hit and probably just retire the move for the game. I think the concept is cool and gives an additional terrain counterplay option, but I wish it still worked even without terrain, even if its base power was cut in half or something. Just above Steel Roller in spot 27, I have Iron Tail. At 100 base power and 75% accuracy, this is definitely a risky move. Obviously, the terrible accuracy is holding this move back, but if you do manage to hit it, you get off a pretty strong attack and have a juicy 30% chance to drop the target's defense stat by one stage. Competitively, you really don't see this move, besides some rare instances like Coil Orform, who can patch up the shaky accuracy and make this move pretty great. I do think for being unreliable, the move can have decent payoff if on the right mon. The high defense drop chance is a positive and unique attribute that sets it apart from the other steel type attacks we're going to get to soon. In spot 26, we get back to status moves with Metal Sound. This move is 85% accuracy and lowers the target's special defense by 2 stages. I can definitely see arguments of this being a little high, but I think it has some practical use cases to break through Pokemons or just provide support for another mon in doubles formats. This will essentially make your special attacks against the target twice as strong after a use, and is also a sound-based move, meaning it will hit through subs and can activate Throat Spray, which isn't too bad synergy. Into the top 25, we see a solid attack in Smart Strike. This move comes in at 70 base power, and like Magnet Bomb, it cannot miss. Smart Strike is unique for being a perfect accuracy move that actually has some decent power. A move like Magnet Bomb is just a little too weak, while Smart Strike can at least be serviceable, especially when factoring stab. It definitely is still lacking a bit in stopping power, but it's the first decently powerful attack we see that doesn't have any sort of downside to it, which definitely helps its case. Next up in spot 24, we'll take a load off with Atomize. This move will raise a user's speed stat by 2 stages while making them nimble. What does this mean? Atomize actually slims the user down by 100 kilograms, or about 220 pounds for you Americans watching. This attribute only factors in rare circumstances, so essentially it's a variation of agility and rock polish. Lots of steel type Pokemon are pretty slow though, so doubling their speed can be really helpful. We've seen it commonly on Celesteela, and plenty of other mons could likely use it to great success. It isn't a crazy setup move, but if you're trying to sweep, you're gonna have a need for speed. And when it comes to that, this move is definitely good for it. Still outclassed by another move we'll see later though. Get ready to unalive yourself at spot 23 as we have Steel Beam. This strong special attack comes in at 140 base power and 95% accuracy. It has a small downside I should mention though. Using this move will cost you 50% of your max HP. This makes it a kamikaze attack you would most commonly see on leads to set up hazards and leave the field ASAP, but can also be used as a last-ditch effort to secure big damage. It is tied for the strongest special attack the Steel type has, but the downside of losing so much HP means it won't secure a higher spot on the list. It even punishes you if you miss, hit into a sub, or target into an empty slot like a fainted opponent. Jeez Louise, that's tough. I'm about to bust into spot 22 with Metal Burst. This move is technically a physical attack with 100% accuracy, but relies on taking a hit first to deal damage. Metal Burst works similar to Counter in Mirror Coat, except instead of dealing double damage back, it deals 1.5 times, and it lacks that nice negative priority those two have. This is a fair trade-off for not having to predict if you're going to take a physical or special hit, but also makes this move less reliable. You have to move after your opponent for this move to work, so it is obviously geared towards slower, bulkier mons. This is definitely better as a surprise bring, as once your opponent sees this move, they can play around it with status moves, low damaging attacks, or just switching. But that surprise is usually all you need to make this move worth running, as you'll likely nab a KO when using it, which can change the tide of the game. Right outside the top 20, in spot 21, is the move Spin Out. At 100 base power and 100% accuracy, this move provides great damage and is pretty reliable. It is exclusive to the Reverum line, but even they choose not to use this move. This is because its negative secondary effect of lowering the user's speed by 2 stages after use. This makes the user pretty much guaranteed to have to take more hits or switch out after using this move, meaning sweepers wouldn't really want to use it over other strong attacks with similar power. I will note that this would be a great bring for Trick Room mons, as you essentially are gaining a +2 speed in that scenario, letting middling speed mons get real slow real quick. So I could see this move having a nice little niche on certain teams. Into the top 20, and I'm going to cover these next two together. In spot 20, I have the move Shelter, and in spot 19, I have Iron Defense. Shelter is a signature move of Hisuian Gudra and raises the user's defense by 2 stages. Iron Defense is a more widespread move that provides the same result. Iron Defense was already a pretty decent move, providing a quick way to bolster your defense stat, but with the introduction of Body Press, Iron Defense stocks have been sent through the roof. This definitely gives more reason for tons of mons to consider this move, as you can leverage having a higher defense stat into providing more offense. You're getting 2 birds stoned at once. Shelter accomplishes the same thing, but has smaller PP, so it is technically inferior, unless you're trying to struggle speedrun. And spot 18 is all reliable flash cannon. At 80 base power and 100% accuracy, this is a standard option to run on special attacking steel types. It is a great move and definitely the most commonly seen special move due to its distribution, but looking at it overall, it isn't crazy power wise, and its meager 10% chance to drop special defense doesn't turn many heads. This move is very consistent though, and at least a 10% chance to drop special defense can come into play and help you in a scenario where you get to spam this attack. Moving up to spot 17 with Pure Grind. At 50 base power and 85% accuracy, this Cling Clang signature move will hit the target 2 times. Multi-hit moves are generally pretty valuable for breaking subs, sash, and sturdy, among other things like multi-scale and disguise, and this move hitting twice gives it an effective base power of 100. It is a really solid move, and I initially had it a bit higher, but I would say it is limited to sweepers, and even then it can be pretty risky to click with a decent miss chance. It still provides really good damage and different utility most other attacks don't with the multi-hit aspect, so right in the middle is a pretty good spot for it in my opinion. About halfway into the rankings at spot 16 is where I'll land Heavy Slam. This physical attack has variable base power and 100% accuracy. The base power is determined in relation to how heavy the target is compared to the user. A little volatile damage-wise, but obviously you're going to want to use this on thick and juicy mons that have more cushion for the pushin'. This lets you usually get off around 100 to 120 base power, which is where this move maxes out. So unless you come across another really hefty fella, you will prefer this move over most others. I have to mention that it is also a minimized counter as well, which is just a nice little bonus running this move affords you. Spinning into the top 15, we slowly get to Gyro Ball. This is another variable power physical attack with 100% accuracy. The variance of this move's power depends on the user's speed stat in relation to the targets, where the slower you are in comparison, the better. It really is interchangeable with Heavy Slam, and the preference relies on the user's weight compared to its speed. The payoff for this move has a much better ceiling though, and scales on a formula rather than fixed increments. You can hit a max base power 150, which isn't terribly hard to do with the amount of slow steel type mons who can abuse it. You would already be moving second, so running a negative speed nature and 0 IVs will power this move up nicely. Some mons will even use items like Iron Ball specifically for boosting Gyro Ball, and I think due to its power ceiling being so high, it's one of the few non-signature steel type moves that would see good use as a coverage option on non-steel types if more distributed. Spot 14 was a tricky one to place, but here I have Doom Desire. This signature move of Jirachi comes in at a whopping 140 base power and 100% accuracy. It is a rare special type move and functions the same as the move Future Sight. It will do nothing on the first turn it's used, and also nothing on the following turn, but on the turn after that, the attack will fire off in the targeted slot. This is definitely a more strategic move, as you can line up a Doom Desire hit with another strong hit to force a KO. Unlike Future Sight, there are no immunities to this move's typing, so it can't be blocked from hitting, even from Protect. It also hits harder than Future Sight, so I could definitely see it being used on some bulkier mons to help wall break. It just sucks that the lone user Jirachi doesn't use the move themselves, so it's hard to gauge just how effective this move would be if it were more accessible. On to lucky spot 13 is a move needing some luck in Meteor Mash. Coming in at 90 base power and 90% accuracy, this move can be a real difference maker. It is basically buffed up Metal Claw, as not only does it have a much higher base power, but it has double the chance to raise a user's attack. I'll let you in on some knowledge here. A 20% chance to raise their user's attack is a lot better than a 10% chance. This makes it a great choice on its limited steel type users like Metagross and Lucario, as even if a resist swaps in, you still have a decent shot to raise your attack to strengthen your other moves. You can use it on a weakened or sacked mon to try to get a cheeky boost, and it's all around just a good, powerful attack. The fact that it has the dreaded 90% accuracy does really hurt its ranking. I'm also not sure how it would rank if it kept its old properties of having 100 power and 85% accuracy. Very conflicted if that was a nerf or a buff. Next up, in spot 12, we quickly move on to the weakest attack on the list. This is Bullet Punch. Bullet Punch comes in at 40 base power and 100% accuracy. The obvious reason it's this high is due to it being a priority move. Priority attacks are so valuable, letting you strike first in the turn regardless of your speed. It's a huge reason mons like Scizor, Metagross, and Lucario have seen the success they have. A lot of fighting types also use this move as a priority coverage option, actually seen on most of the mons with access. It isn't going to be your primary attacking option unless your name is Technician Scizor, but the sense of security you get having that priority in your back pocket is invaluable, as it provides a scapegoat against frail setup sweepers, is able to deal the final blow on weakened mons, and helps your own sweep regardless of your speed, as you can take out the fast revenge killers. In spot 11 is the infamous Iron Head. Iron Head is an 80 base power and 100% accurate physical move. It provides a great, but perhaps controversial 30% flinch chance. This is what gives the move its luster. Flinches can net you what are essentially 3 turns as you stop your opponent from moving. And while not all mons can abuse this as well as Serene Grace Jirachi, there are a good amount of non-steel types that already love to run this move as coverage thanks to its potential to hack the opponent. You can really change the tide of the game with a timely flinch, as you can chip them into KO range and win matches you wouldn't normally have a chance to. Into the top 10, we have the elite steel type moves. And if you want to vote on which type I'm covering next, I'm holding polls in my Discord you can participate in. They'll be up for 3 days after the video is posted. Also, make sure to subscribe so you can see when the next one drops. Just saying, it would be super motivating to pump these out faster if we got to 20k subs. Alright, back to the list. The top 10, to no surprise, consists of almost exclusively gray signature moves. We're going to cover 2 at once again, with spot 10 going to Behemoth Bash and spot 9 going to Behemoth Blade. These moves come in at 100 base power and 100% accuracy. I definitely think you can make an argument for these moves being placed below Iron Head due to them not really having a secondary effect, but I do think that in a lot of cases, the 20 extra base power would be worth it to run these moves. It made the intro to the top 10 easier as well, so I'm keeping it this way. Just a couple of nice and powerful physical attacks that don't miss and don't have downsides. Behemoth Blade is in the higher spot due to it being boosted by sharpness. Otherwise, these moves are exact replicas. On to spot 8, we have the move Sunsteel Strike. Also coming in at 100 base power and 100% accuracy, this Solgaleo signature move functions almost identically to the last 2. But if given the option, you would run this move thanks to its secondary effect. Sunsteel Strike has a built-in mold breaker effect to it, meaning it will ignore all ignorable abilities when hitting. This gives it tons of potential advantages, ignoring important abilities like Multiscale, Fluffy, Filter, Friend Guard, Disguise. It even ignores Wonder Guard. This would give great reason to use it as your coverage option on non-steals for these specific situations, and is reminiscent of Core Enforcer from the last video. But we actually see this competitively in practice. We're running low on status moves going into spot 7, but I have one for you here with King Shield. This protection variation is exclusive to Aegislash and has some Mondo cool use cases. King Shield will protect the user from all damaging moves at turn, and if a Pokemon makes contact with the user, their attack will be lowered 1 stage. This has major mind game implications, mainly for physical attackers, as you run the risk of losing your juice offensively. The 50-50s definitely go both ways, as this move is somewhat balanced by not protecting the user against status moves. This keeps it outside the top 5, but I feel like the odds definitely skew more in the favor of the King Shield user. It still works to protect against all damaging moves, and the extra payoff is really good, especially against choice mons and ones that don't run status moves. Number 6 is perhaps my hot take for the video. This goes to the move Anchor Shot. Anchor Shot is an 80 base power physical attack with 100% accuracy. This provides serviceable, reliable damage, but the real value you get is in its secondary effect. Anchor Shot traps a target after hitting, preventing them from swapping. This isn't anything crazy on its lone user in Delmise, but if given to more mons, I think this move would be busted and see tons of use. It's actually the only trapping attack with no immunities that doesn't also trap the user. This provides incredible utility against mons who want to swap into Scout or eat a couple hits and head out. You can use passive mons as setup fodder, and knowing your opponent can't swap out is a really big advantage to have. Now is a top 5, the best of the best. Probably. A lot of these moves have such unique varying effects that it's not a one-size-fits-all ranking. In spot number 5, we're Making It Rain. Make It Rain comes in at a great 120 base power and has 100% accuracy. This Golden Go signature move is the only steel type attack that is also a spread move. This gives it a leg up on the competition in double battles, dealing overall more damage across the field. If it wasn't for its drawback of lowering the user's special attack stat by 1 stage after use, this move could have pushed up another spot or 2. But unfortunately, for this move's sake, this isn't the case. It isn't nearly as bad as other similarly powerful and highly regarded moves like Draco Meteor and Leaf Storm that are marginally stronger but have a lot harsher drawbacks. This lets you get off at least a couple turns of this move without the damage becoming laughable. I would say this would be the go-to doubles move though, as you don't have to guess protection slots, there's no immunities, and you gain a lot of utility, able to take out a weakened opponent without dedicating a whole attack just to that slot. Into spot number 4 is a very new move in Tashion Cutter. This Iron Crown signature move is 50 base power, can't miss, and hits twice. The reason it's this high is thanks to those special characteristics. Hitting twice brings this move on par with other great moves power-wise, but also gives it the advantages we talked about previously with Gear Grind. It's so much higher though, thanks to how reliable and not punishable it is in comparison. Instead of a mischance hurting it, it has perfect accuracy, meaning your accuracy can be lowered to -6 and their evasion +6, and you're still guaranteed to hit. It is a special move that doesn't make contact, so you aren't hurt by Intimidate, Burn, or contact punishing items and abilities. It doesn't lower your special attack like Make It Rain, giving it more spammability over it, while not being too much weaker and stronger when used 2 or more turns. I feel like it just sits above it as a top special steel type move on the list. Into the luxurious top 3 steel type moves, and in spot 3 with the bronze medal is the powerful Gigaton Hammer. Coming in at a staggering 160 base power and 100% accuracy, this is the strongest steel type move in the game. Tankaton gets to deal huge damage off its less than impressive 75 base attack thanks to this move. It is of course balanced by a secondary effect of not being able to be used twice in a row. This attribute doesn't prevent it from being this high on the list though, as the power is just so great. It's not like the drawbacks are terrible, like having to recharge. You aren't left vulnerable, there's no mischance or stab drops that come with it either. You just have to choose another move the following turn. As a coverage option, this will be used on plenty of mons as a nuke button, and as stab on physical steel types, any mon with a decent attack stat is taking bodies with it. It is an amazing move, currently balanced by being exclusive to a weaker mon, but even so, Gigaton Hammer helps it currently function in the OU tier. There are only 2 moves left, and the runner-up goes to the last status move left in Shift Gear. Shift Gear is an insanely good setup move that gives the user +2 speed and +1 attack per use. It is better Dragon Dance, which, spoiler alert, made it pretty high on the Dragon ranking. At +2 speed, you're pretty much guaranteeing to outspeed the opposing team if you aren't comically slow to begin with. Then you gain that attack boost on top of it. It is one of the few setup moves that give you +3 overall to your stats with no drawbacks. You immediately become ready for a sweep on semi-weakened teams, and I think this move would be talked about a lot more if it was given to any physically based mons who actually had the tools to abuse it. Bulky mons would also love this, as setting up 2 shift gears make up for low speed while giving them a massive power boost. Overall, a crazy setup move that I think earned this high placement. Now for the number 1 move. I'm sure a lot of you could have figured this out before the video started, but we're giving the honor to the absolutely busted double iron bash. This is no doubt the best steel type move in the game, and I'll fight each and every one of you who disagrees. Melmetal's signature move comes in at 60 base power and 100% accuracy. It hits a target 2 times for 60 base power a pop, and each hit has a 30% chance to flinch the opponent. Say what? That's 1.5 Iron Heads worth of power first of all, and then 2 Iron Heads worth of flinch chances. Overall, it gives you like a 51% chance to flinch, pretty sure. Thankfully for our sake, this is at least only on a really slow mon, but it is also still incredibly broken on that mon due to its overall power. If this move was able to see use on mons with any speed, it would be quick banned immediately, which it was in balanced hack mons formats, as mons like Zacian could use it and pretty much invalidate everything. Inner focus usage going up tenfold. Slow mons could even run Scarf just to abuse this move. We're not even gonna mention the great synergy it would have with so many abilities that would make it even more busted beyond comprehension. We're lucky Steel has a lot of common bulky resists like water and other steel types that could somewhat stand up to this move. As the prominent counterplay were things like swapping in a Ferrothorn, Heatran, or Rotom and trying to chip it down and cripple it with contact punishing effects. This was so common that Melmetal often runs niche items like protective pads and the punching glove to counteract it. Which reminds me, if you're interested in mons who've used niche items competitively, check out the recent video I made which covers these instances. I'll leave it at the end screen. Overall, this was a no-brainer choice for me, and I had little trouble declaring Double Iron Bash as the best Steel-type move in the game. But what do you think? Is there another Steel-type move that should take the crown? Do you think any were placed unjustly low or were overrated? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Special shout out to my YouTube and Patreon supporters, including Gold Bud Mr. Frank Beans. If you want to support these videos, check out my links in the description. Thanks for watching, buds, and I'll catch you in the next one.